I'm always watching. And I know that's how the other members are. You know, you don't put the investigative time in like, you know, we all have on this file and not be watching for her.
Yorkton, Saskatchewan. It's a small prairie town with a crime rate that is more than double the national average. It's a place where people work in agriculture. It's here that young Mekayla Bali lived her life. Adored by her mother, siblings, and relatives, she was known to have a kind disposition. She enjoyed playing musical instruments and taking photographs of nature. Mekayla wanted to pursue a career in childcare or veterinary work. She fit the bill as a normal teenager, someone who wouldn't draw too much attention, but this was all about to change. On a cool day in April 2016, Mekayla and two friends went out for lunch. As the group talked, Mekayla brought up a trip she wanted to take to Moose Jaw or Prince Albert, both towns in Saskatchewan. The conversation was not out of the ordinary for the group of teens. They'd often joked about moving to a bigger city so they could have more things to do. When the group was done with lunch, they returned to Sacred Heart High School, and it was during class that afternoon that Mekayla's teacher noticed something wrong. She noticed that Mekayla wasn't acting normal that day. At the end of the school day, Mekayla's friend Oksana received a text from her asking to go to the bank the next day. The trip seemed important. Fast forward to the next day, 6:41 a.m. in the morning. Oksana's phone lights up, but it's not an alarm. It's a text message from Mekayla. "Can you take me to the bank?" Oksana sends a text back. The bank doesn't open till like 8 or something. Later that morning, Mekayla's grandmother Margaret dropped her off at school. When class started that morning shortly after, Mekayla was absent. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Terry Hedden, the owner of Terry's Pawn and Bargain, was starting his day. He was getting some chores done and setting up when Mekayla walked in. She had a silver ring with her and she wanted to sell it to him, but Terry didn't want to get involved with silver, so he didn't buy the ring. Later that morning, Mekayla's friend Shelby received a text message from her. It read, "Hey, I need help." About half an hour after this text, she received another text. "Never mind, I figured it out." As lunch break began at Sacred Heart High School, two of Mekayla's acquaintances, Ollie and Wanik, saw her approaching them. She walked up to them and told them that she was going to take a bus to Regina, a city in Saskatchewan about a 2-hour car drive away from Yorkton. When the school day ended later that afternoon, Mekayla's grandmother waited in the parking lot for Mekayla to exit the school, but this didn't happen. She also didn't show up to her 4 p.m. violin rehearsal. Something was wrong, and at 8 p.m. that night, Mekayla's mother reported her as missing. The Yorkton Royal Canadian Mounted Police took the case that night. Officers started by contacting banks and phone companies. They learned that on April 11th, the day before Mekayla disappeared, she had contacted her bank 3 times. She had also checked her account balance and transferred $25. Before she went missing, Mekayla told some friends that she had over $5,000 in the bank account. This was not the case, and investigators actually found this out. She did not have close to that much money in her bank account. Police also learned that on the day Mekayla disappeared, she was seen waiting outside the bank on a surveillance camera until it opened. She was talking on the phone at the time. She continued talking on the phone until the doors opened at 8:55 a.m. Now, while she was in the bank, she withdrew $55 from her account. Not only was this footage important because it showed where she was, it also showed that she was on the phone, a trend that continued throughout the day. And this is something that would become extremely frustrating for investigators because these phone calls were not traced. When we connect these two events together and we look at Mekayla going to the bank and then also going to a pawn shop, it's very clear that she needed money. This is something important when we talk about what her motive could have been. In this time where she was in between the bank and the pawn shop, a lot of her movements weren't picked up. That was the case until a camera at a local hardware store recorded Mekayla walking towards a Tim Hortons. She was carrying a backpack with her, something that was unusual according to her friends. Usually she carried a purse. And when you take a look at this backpack, it's very full. It's packed to the brim. She brought a lot of stuff with her on this journey she took around Yorkton. So she's walking towards this Tim Hortons. Inside this Tim Hortons restaurant, there were 2 cameras. And the footage they recorded showed Mekayla entering the building. She bought a hot beverage and she sat at a booth. She was on her phone and she was facing away from the entrance. Perhaps she was worried about somebody seeing her and asking too many questions. It appears that she takes her phone apart, assemble it, and use it again. At 9:23, she walks out of the restaurant. She turns around after doing this and then walks back through the store and leaves through the other door. She's once again observed at the security camera at the hardware store, and this time she's heading north and she walks out of view. She's seen on this hardware store's camera at 9:42 a.m., and she appears from behind a giant Tiger store and walks towards the Tim Hortons again. She's holding her phone to her ear, appearing to be in a phone call, as she walks into the Tim Hortons for the second time. These phone calls would have told police a lot of information, but from what we know, they don't have access to them. Police believe that she used social media apps to make these calls, and these are very difficult to track because of US privacy laws. So Mekayla's back in Tim Hortons. This time, she's facing the door. Over the next half hour, Mekayla switches from using her phone to not using it 6 times. While talking on the phone, she grabs her backpack and leaves Tim Hortons, only to return 2 minutes later for the 3rd time that day. This time, she leaves her seat and speaks with an older lady sitting at a nearby table. Police actually talked to this woman, and she revealed that Mekayla was asking for help booking a hotel. This witness wasn't sure if she needed help booking it because she was underage or because she didn't have enough money. She returns to her seat one more time and then finally leaves the Tim Hortons. In this general time frame at 11:35 a.m., Mekayla sent a text to her friend, Shelby. It said, "I'll see you at lunch." And at lunchtime, she had that conversation with her 2 acquaintances and then walked out of the school. And police actually were able to look at security camera footage and see her exit the school. She rounds the corner and walks out of the frame of the camera. There's reports that she went to the SDC bus depot. There was a restaurant there called the Trail Stop Restaurant, and it's reported that she had lunch there. It's also believed that she asked a worker at the bus stop how much a ticket was to Regina. But when she found out how much it cost to do that, she decided not to buy a ticket. There was an eyewitness that was at the bus depot that day, and they thought that they saw Mekayla leave the building with somebody. It was an older man with a distinguishing feature, a tattoo of a fiery cross that he had on his forearm. This man was later identified by police. He was questioned, and the police determined that he was not associated with this. The next day, by 7 a.m., Mekayla's phone was turned off.
We have not been able to move a positive identification or a confirmation of where Mekayla was past that 1:45 timeline at the Yorkton bus station. That is information that we can't move past. People just don't vanish without anybody knowing anything. There is someone out there who knows something.
So during the search for Mekayla, police reviewed hundreds of hours of surveillance videos. They had cameras all over the town that had picked up where she went, and a lot of these have been released, as we just looked at. This footage was important because it showed her journey around the town that day. She had quite a few stops, and clearly she had some sort of objective. But it's hard to determine what that was because the phone calls were never traced. We don't know what was being said on that phone. Not only was Mekayla's phone turned off, but her social media accounts were dormant until a few months later, where mysteriously, Mekayla's Snapchat account opened a message that one of her friends had sent her. To some people, this renewed hope that Mekayla was still alive and out there somewhere. Her social media accounts are still up, and she had one Instagram that many people have seen, and she also had another one that was blank. The About Me section of this account simply said goodbye. There was no profile picture. It's just a black image. There's one post on her Instagram account that was made on March 1st, 2016, that I find particularly interesting. She said she was looking for friends and didn't want any creepy people to message her. Mekayla also had a Kik account. The username was Mickey Golf, and this Kik account has been cited by police as very suspect. But Mekayla's friends have said that she spoke to at least 4 guys online, 2 of which, named Christopher and Josh, were contacted by police, and they refused further comment, but they're thought to not have any connection with the case. The police were starting to run out of leads. This case was not going anywhere for them. So they actually contacted a man who they thought was Mekayla's father. He told them that he believed Mekayla didn't know who he was and that she hadn't contacted him. So he told the RCMP this, and they didn't just say, okay, that's all right, have a nice day. They actually went to his house and searched everywhere. They also did this at Mekayla's mother's house, but nothing turned up. After all the time that police spent investigating Mekayla's family, there was nothing that directly linked them to her disappearance. But there were events in Mekayla's life that, as they happened before she went missing, didn't raise a lot of attention, but during the investigation were noticed and looked at. A few months before she disappeared, on Valentine's Day, Mekayla received a bouquet of roses, and it was in a plain cardboard box. Police actually looked into this, and they searched for this person that could have sent her these flowers, and once they found this person, they determined that they weren't associated with the case at all. As more time passed, the Yorkton RCMP were starting to run low on resources to handle this case. They transferred it to the GIS, also known as the General Investigations Section, F Division. That's just another way of saying that this is officially a cold case. Now, there were a lot of what-ifs with this case, and police actually looked into some of these hypotheticals. Under the presumption that she had left the city, they checked hotels and looked at their records. They came up with nothing, and she could have still stayed at a hotel, but it wouldn't have been recorded. There's lots of ways around this. In August 2017, the RCMP sent its dive team to search Hopkins Lake, which is located close to Mekayla's school. They said the search had nothing to do with any new tips or specific information, but they had to, quote, cover off, unquote, all possibilities. Since Mekayla disappeared, hundreds of tips have come in about possible sightings, and these haven't only been in Canada, they've been all over the world. In October 2016, it was thought that she was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Mekayla's mom actually flew there to put up posters.
We're here at the Grey Eagle Casino on Tsuut'ina land, Tsuut'ina Nation land. This is where Mekayla Bali was seen, or thought to have been seen, on January 20th, 2017.
In 2019, somebody thought they spoke with a girl who introduced herself as Mekayla at a bar in Edmonton, and the RCMP said that they can confirm that this was a possible sighting. The bottom line is that these tips have provided no actual closure for Mekayla's family, and her mother has tirelessly campaigned for her daughter's case. Other members of her family are still hoping for the best, and a lot of the police that have worked on this case have been clearly impacted by it. Vigils have been organized since Mekayla went missing to keep the case in the public eye, and to remember somebody who vanished into thin air. Years later, questions are still unanswered. Why did she spend so much time on the phone? Who was she talking to? Who knows where she is? Is she okay? Perhaps time will bring answers to these questions, but for now, Mekayla Bali's case remains unsolved. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we'll see you in the next one.